we have the nervous system. First, we will start off with the basics of the nervous system. The nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, sensory organs, and nerves. The nerves connect organs and control the human body. These organs make it possible for the body to communicate with its parts. The nervous system controls and coordinates functions throughout the body and responds to internal and external stimuli.
A major part of the nervous system are neurons, and they transmit electrochemical signals in order to communicate. Dendrites are extended structures in the body and gather stimuli from neurons, receptors, or the environment.
Nerves are a whitish fiber or bundle of fibers that transmits impulses of sensation to the brain or spinal cord and impulses from these to the other muscles and organs.
Part of the nerves are the resting neurons. The nerve cell pumps Na ions out of the cell and K ions into the cell by means of active transport. The neuron cell membrane allows more K ions to leak across than Na, causing the membrane to have a negative charge. Resting potential is the electrical charge across the cell membrane of a neuron.
The nerve impulse starts with a moving impulse. An impulse begins when a neuron is stimulated by another neuron or by the environment and travels down the axon away from the cell body and towards the axon terminals. At the leading end of an impulse is a positively charged Na, which causes the inside of the membrane to become temporarily more positive than the outside and reverse the resting potential, called the action potential. The threshold is the minimum level of stimulus required to activate a neuron, and the strength of the impulse is always the same. Either there is an impulse reaction in response to a stimulus or not.
Next is synapse. Synapse is the location at which a neuron can transfer an impulse to another cell. The synaptic cleft separates the axon terminal from the dendrites of the adjacent cell. Neurotransmitters are chemicals used by a neuron to transmit an impulse across a synapse to another cell. As soon as an impulse reaches the axon terminal, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft and attach themselves to the receptors of the neighboring cell. This causes another Na reaction which, if strong enough to exceed the threshold, begins a new impulse.
So the nervous system is in two parts. The first part is the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the complex of nerve tissues that controls the activities of the bodies. In vertebrates, it comprises the brain and the spinal cord.
First is the brain. The brain is the place to which impulses flow and from which impulses originate. The cerebrum is the largest and most prominent region of the human brain, and it is responsible for the voluntary learning and judgment. The cerebellum is the second largest region of the brain, located at the back of the skull, and it coordinates, balances the actions of the muscles so that the body can move gracefully and efficiently. The brain stem connects the brain to the spinal cord and contains two regions, pons and the medulla oblongata, which regulate the flow of information between the body. This controls the blood pressure, heart rate, breathing, and swallowing. The thalamus and the hypothalamus are both found between the brainstem and the cerebrum. The thalamus receives messages from the sensory receptors throughout the body and relays the information to the cerebrum. The hypothalamus is the control center for recognition in hunger, thirst, fatigue, anger, and body temperature.
Next is the spine. The spine is the main communication link between the brain and the body, made of 31 pairs of spinal nerve branches which process certain kinds of information like reflexes. A reflex is a quick automatic response to a stimulus.
The second part of the nervous system is the peripheral nervous system, which is the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system transmits impulses from one sense organs to the central nervous system. The motor division transmits impulses from the central nervous system to the glands or the muscles or the glands.
One part of the peripheral is the somatic nervous system, and it regulates activities that are under conscious control, such as the movement of skeletal muscles, and some are reflexes that act with or without conscious control.
Next is the autonomic nervous system. This system regulates activities that are automatic or involuntary. Sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system controls opposing effects on the same organ system and help the body maintain homeostasis. This consists of sensory neurons, ganglia, clusters of neurons, and nerves that connect the central nervous system to arms, hands, legs, and feet.
Now we have the sensory organs. First, we have the sensory receptors. Millions of neurons that react directly to stimuli from the environment, including light, sound, motion, chemicals, pressure, and changes in temperature. Next, one of the sensory organs are the eye. Light enters through the cornea, a tough transparent layer of cells that helps focus the light. Pupils, which are tiny muscles in the iris, adjust the size to regulate the amount of light that enters the eye. Lenses are behind the iris, and where small muscles attach to focus the eye to see near or distant objects. Light is focused into the retina, where the photoreceptors convert light energy into nerve impulses. There are two kinds of photoreceptors, which are rods and cones. Rods are extremely sensitive to light, but they do not distinguish different colors. Cones are less sensitive than rods, but respond to light differently and can distinguish color. Evolution of the eye. A simple light-sensitive spot on the skin was able to give one of our ancestors an advantage. Random changes in the curve of the eye allowed vision to be sharpened. It also narrowed so light could enter through a small hole. The retina and lens in front of the eye are formed.
Next is the ear. And the ear controls hearings because sound is nothing more than vibrations in the air, and ears can distinguish between the pitch and the volume of the vibrations. Vibrations enter the ear through the auditory canal and cause the eardrum to vibrate. The vibrations are picked up by bones called the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. A pressure wave created by the vibrations passes into the cochlea, which is lined with hair cells that move with the wave. The hair cells produce nerve impulses that are sent to the brain through the cochlear nerve. The ear also controls balance. The three canals at the right angles to each other, called semicircular canals, are in the inner ear and have two sinus sacs located behind them to monitor the position of the body, with an emphasis on the head in relation to gravity. Both structures are filled with fluids and lined with hair cells, which change positions as the head moves.
Next is the tongue. The tongue controls taste. Taste buds cover the tongue and other locations in the mouth and gain a sense of taste, salty, bitter, sweet, and sour, through a chemical sense. Next is the nose. The nose controls smell. The nasal passage is lined with chemoreceptors that respond to specific chemicals and then send impulses to the brain through sensory nerves. Lastly is the skin. The skin controls touch. Skin contains sensory receptors that respond to temperature, touch, and pain with a greater density along fingers, toes, and faces.
The nervous system have relations to other systems. The first is the muscular system. Muscle receptors give information to the brain about movement and body position. The contraction of muscles are controlled by the brain.
Next is the integumentary system. The skin receptors send sensory information to the brain. Blood flow and sweat glands are regulated by the nervous system, and the muscles that are connected to hair follicles are controlled by nerves.
Lastly is the digestive system. The building blocks of most neurotransmitters are from the digestive system. The digestive tract, which is a major passage in the body, large bundle of nerve fibers or other continuous elongated anatomical structure or region, is controlled by the nervous system. The brain determines drinking and feeding behavior. Muscles for eating are controlled by the brain. The digestive system sends sensory information to the brain.
Other organisms with this body system. One example are snakes, which have heat receptors. Snakes have a capability to have sight in the dark due to protein channels that are activated by heat from the bodies of their prey. Snakes have pit organs, which contain a membrane that detects infrared radiation from warm bodies. The pit organs enable snakes to see an image of their predator or prey. Nerve systems in these pit organs have an ion channel called TRPA1, which is a receptor that detects infrared radiation as heat. The snake's pit organs include nerve fibers known as trigeminal ganglia. The pit organ is part of the snake's somatosensory system, which detects touch, temperature, pain, and does not receive signals from the eyes, confirming that snakes see infrared by detecting heat, not photons of light. Infrared radiation heats up the pit membrane tissue, and TRPA1 channels open when a threshold temperature is reached, allowing ions to flow into the nerve cells and triggering an electrical signal.
Next is the fish lateral line system. And fish possess the ability to touch objects in their surrounding without physical contact or seeing them in the dark with the fish lateral line system. Humans only take in little information about their surroundings, such as infrared light and electromagnetic waves. The lateral line system indicates changes in the currents or disruptions in the velocity field, which provides support for the lack of sight in dark or muddy waters for fish. And the organs that are in charge of the system are aligned alongside the fish's body, eyes, and mouth. The organs called neuromasts are made up of flexible and gelatin-like units approximately 1/10 of a millimeter long, and they sit on the animal's skin or underneath it. They are sensitive to the motions of water. Hair cells are attached to neuromasts that resemble pressure sensors in the human inner ear. Nerves send signals from the hair cells for processing in the brain and identify sources of change in the water's motion.
Diseases affecting the nervous system. First is Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's involves the malfunction of and death of vital nerve cells in the brain. It affects neurons in an area of the brain called the substantia nigra. Some of these dying neurons produce dopamine, a chemical that sends messages to the part of the brain that controls movement and coordination, which is why it affects the body's movements.
Next, we have the Huntington's disease, an inherited condition that causes the neurons in the brain to degenerate. This disease has a broad impact on a person's functional ability and usually results in movement, thinking, and psychiatric disorders. Specifically affected are cells of the basal ganglia, structures deep within the brain that have a number of important functions, including coordinating movement. Within the basal ganglia, HD especially targets neurons of the striatum, particularly those in the caudate nuclei and the pallidum. Also affected is the brain's outer surface or cortex, which controls thought, perception, and memory.
Lastly is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease impacts mental functions and primary memory. The brain contains 100 billion neurons. Signals travel through these that form basic memories such as thought and feelings. These are the chief types of cells that are destroyed by the disease. Alzheimer's disease disrupts both the way the electrical charge travels within the cell and the activity of neurotransmitters. Over time, the brain shrinks dramatically.
Fun facts. Number 1, there are millions of nerve cells in the human body. This number even exceeds the number of stars in the Milky Way.
In humans, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, while the left side of the body. Oh wait, I read that wrong. In humans, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, while the left side of the brain controls the right side.
The nervous system can transmit pulses at 100 meters per second. The speed of messages to the brain can exceed 180 miles per hour.
In a child developing inside the womb, the neurons are known to grow at the rate of 250,000 neurons per minute. By the time of birth, the brain already consists of approximately 10 million nerve cells.
This is a picture of the nervous system.